Hi guys, welcome to Vegan Booty Talks. And today I have a guest with me. He adopted a vegan lifestyle in 1995 at age 15. Today he is an author of the books Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, Shredded, Plant-Based Muscles, and the New York Times Bestseller, The Plant-Based Athlete. He is a godfather of vegan bodybuilding, two-time natural bodybuilding champion. He is considered one of the VegNews magazine most influential vegan athletes. Welcome to the show, Robert Cheeke. Hey, how are you?
Hey, Avrora, I am great. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God, I am so excited to talk to you, and I'm gonna say thank you for making time for that. I know how busy you are, and you just launched your new book. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it has been a pretty exciting time, a pretty busy time, I guess, although I know everybody's busy. And we just launched the Plant-Based Athlete. It became a New York Times bestseller, a #1 international bestseller, and has been translated into 6 languages so far, including one just this past week. A few days ago, we got a deal in Polish, which go along with Chinese, German, Korean, Italian, and Spanish, as well as
Wow,
in English, of course. So yeah, it's been a kind of a wild ride. So yeah,
amazing.
I just set up here in my basement, getting in for a nice Colorado winter down here, and happy to be chatting with you today.
Yes, and I'm sure a lot of my followers and listeners right now know who you are, but just for some who still didn't know you, could you please tell us where you're from and what do you do for a living?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm originally from Corvallis, Oregon, where I grew up on a farm, as you mentioned, and I currently live in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I work for Vegan Strong, which is a nonprofit vegan athlete organization. I've worked for Vegan Strong for the last 4 years. So I actually get to promote veganism for my job, to make a living, traveling around to the largest fitness expos in the country and many of the largest vegan festivals in the country as well, promoting the Vegan Strong lifestyle. And then, of course, I write books as well. And hopefully someday that will be the only thing that I do is just write books and tour and speak. And that will be a full-time living for me. But for now, I work with Vegan Strong, and I'm happy to be there.
Wow, that's amazing. And you were the guy who was the first one I actually saw out there in the internet doing vegan bodybuilding. So thank you for that. I know I'm not alone. That's why you are called like a godfather of vegan bodybuilding. So we all thank you for that. But could you tell us a little bit more how is all started? So how long are you
Yeah.
actually vegan?
Yeah. So in a couple of weeks, I will start my 27th year as a vegan athlete. So I've been doing this since 1995, and I started growing up on a farm, and I wanted to get bigger and stronger, but I also didn't want to harm animals. You know, after growing up on a farm and raising farm animals, raising cows and chickens and turkeys and rabbits and ducks and geese and goats and horses and all these animals, and then selling some of them at the auction to be turned into food, specifically cows and chickens, I eventually decided, you know, I don't want to do that anymore. And so my older sister, who was already vegan, inspired me to be vegan back on December 8th, 1995. So I was a 5-sport athlete in high school. I was a pretty small kid, but I wanted to get bigger and stronger. And so I thought that, you know what, if I can do this, if I can build muscle without eating any animals, then maybe that would inspire other people to do the same. And that would save animals in the long run. And maybe some sort of movement could take hold, or I could contribute to some sort of animal rights movement that has already been in existence for many, many decades. And so that's what I did. I weighed 120 pounds when I became vegan. And I continued to be a long distance runner before I discovered weightlifting and the sport of bodybuilding. And over the years, I got up to 220 pounds. So I put on 100 pounds with a plant-based diet. I won multiple bodybuilding competitions. I started my website, veganbodybuilding.com, in 2002, 2003. And I filmed the documentary Vegan Fitness Built Naturally back in 2005, and then released my first book, Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness, in 2010. And now I've written 5 books, including the latest one, The Plant-Based Athlete, which has been obviously the most popular one. So
Wow.
so that's where it started, and how it's gone and where it is right now.
That's an amazing story. How much inspiration I'm here. But I want to know, first of all, how an idea of growing up in a farm kid could be like be vegan. Your sister was vegan and she also was growing up on the same farm. So in 1995, it wasn't as popular as right now. So what does actually
Yeah.
happen? Why is your family, your like your parents was vegan or something?
No, no. In fact, the opposite. My father is a professor of animal agriculture at Oregon State University. He's
Mm,
retired now, but he taught for 30 or 35 years, and he wrote 15 books teaching people how to raise animals for food. So
wow.
I come from a farming background, and my mother met my dad at the animal science department where she worked also, and she also came from a farm. So my dad grew up on a farm in Canada. My mom grew up on a farm in Oregon near where I was born and raised, and they had nothing to, no interest in veganism, nothing to do with veganism. In fact, they were concerned when my older sister and I became vegan and my younger brother became vegetarian back in 1995. They're very concerned for our health, worried about our well-being, that we would be malnourished, not get enough protein, not get enough nutrition. And we're concerned for our safety and for our health and our well-being. And so the reason, like, how do you go from farm kid to, to champion vegan bodybuilder? Well, to me, it actually does make sense growing up on a farm, because you see farm animals as pets, much like a dog or a cat that, someone in the city might see. And they might have a dog with a first name or a cat with a first name. That's their pet, their friend, their companion. And it's no different with cows or chickens or rabbits or turkeys or goats or sheep or pigs or any other animal, that when you spend time with them and get to know them, you realize they have the same desires that not just you and I have, but the dogs and cats and other domesticated animals have, that we call as pets, that they all desire to live a life free of fear, pain, and suffering. And that's just the way it is. I mean, chickens don't want to suffer. Cows don't want to suffer. They don't want to go through pain. They don't want to have their babies taken away from them. They don't want to be crammed into small cages. They don't want to be raised just to be turned into food and then suffer the consequences of slaughter and food production. They want to have families. They want to roam around. They want to graze. They want to eat. They want to look at the sights and smells and everything that's around them in their environment. And so I recognized that as a kid. I was exposed to videos of factory farming and animal testing. This is before the internet, mind you, back in 1995. Most people didn't have the internet at home until maybe 1996 or 97, if they even had a computer, which most people probably didn't, and I didn't. And so there wasn't this internet or social media or Google searches to look up information about this lifestyle. There were organizations, of course. There were videos, and there were some books out there like Diet for a New America and Becoming Vegan, and a few people who were influential like Howard Lyman and Gene Bauer and Ingrid Newkirk, people who were John Robbins, people who are legends in the vegan movement. But we had to kind of form our own communities. I was in high school, with other people who were interested in veganism at my high school. And then, going off to college and trying to, are there other vegans around here that I can meet with and navigate the grocery stores and the restaurants, and just a different landscape back then than it is now. And so I embraced all of that. I enjoyed it. It's been more than a quarter century now that I've been doing this. I'm in my 40s now, and I've really been fortunate to be able to talk about this lifestyle and reach so many people over the last 26 years, and doing what I love to do as a living, saving animals and promoting veganism and doing my best to reduce animal suffering and cruelty and those types of things through athletics, through being a champion athlete, through writing books, through touring and speaking and spreading that message. So I'm honored to do it. It's been a real pleasure to be able to live this vegan athlete lifestyle for so long, and hopefully continue to be active as a plant-based athlete for a long time.
Yeah, amazing story. So for anyone listening out there, because right now it's easier to become vegan, but in 1995 and being 15 years old, could you give a couple steps? What did you do to switch to the plant-based diet? What was those switches in your diet that helped you to actually successfully transition?
Yeah, it was, well, I have to say it was quite a bit different back then. First of all, as I said, I didn't have really the internet, didn't have a lot of my own money. I was a teenager. This was the 1990s. I lived in an agriculture community, a community that raised animals and, farms all around. And it was very common to live that lifestyle. So for me, I just knew I didn't want to consume animals anymore. Right. But I didn't know exactly what I should be eating. And so I just eliminated animal foods. I eliminated meat and dairy and eggs and honey and whatever else, lard, whatever else, is in animal ingredients that are in food. And, at the time I wasn't left with what I considered a ton of options, perhaps, because again, I wasn't like searching the internet or looking at cookbooks or having a lot of friends, show me around. I would shop at the local grocery co-op, the natural food co-op, and I plenty of tofu and tempeh and things like that. And then I would, eat potatoes, and we had food we grew on the farm as well, cucumbers, tomatoes, zucchini, squash, corn, all of those types of things. I would pick apples from the tree outside that we had and pick berries and all that from the food we had on the farm, plums and all of that. But it really wasn't until later on, I was still a good athlete through high school. It was my sophomore year that I became vegan. But by the time I was a junior and senior, I was playing varsity sports. I was on the #1 ranked soccer team in the state of Oregon. I was on the #2 ranked cross country team in the state of Oregon. I was competing at a pretty high level and doing this as a plant-based athlete at age 16, 17, 18.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wasn't until a bit later on when I embraced bodybuilding, then I started to pay attention to nutrition. Before that, I didn't care. Like most young people, like most teenagers, you just eat pizza or soda or chips and salsa
Yeah,
and
but
red
you
egg
didn't
yolk.
eat pizza, right? Because of the cheese and meat in there.
Right. But there was probably some vegan pizza back then. I'm
Oh,
trying to think
okay.
back. There's certainly, the vegan ice creams and those things were kind of limited back then. They weren't very good, to be honest. They were rice based and some soy based, but what I was eating was things like, breads and bagels and chips and salsa and fruits and pasta and that kind of stuff, which is all okay, but it's not great nutritionally. So once
Mhm.
I got into bodybuilding, that's when I learned more about macronutrients and micronutrients and focusing on my total calorie intake versus expenditure and whether I'm going to bulk up or be in a calorie deficit and lose weight and shed fat, get ready for bodybuilding competition and all of that. So then, years into being vegan, already 3, 4, 5 years into being vegan, then it was like, okay, now I'm going to focus on these kind of foods,
Mhm.
more leafy greens, oats, beans, lentils, rice, tofu, tempeh, like making more of a nutrition plan than just like winging it and just eating, whatever I feel like. But I think that's what all young people do, all high school and college people, vegan or not, they just kind of just eat whatever. But once you get more interested in athletics and wanting to pursue it as maybe a profession or at least compete at a high level, then you start paying attention to nutrition. And then,
Wow.
I had plenty of mentors come along, like Brendan Brazier, who I met in 2005 and filmed a documentary with him. And then I started learning more about hemp seeds and chia seeds and flax seeds and kale and, all this stuff that it wasn't really on my radar before.
Mhm.
So it evolved, that my plant-based diet definitely has evolved over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand that. Now let's talk about your first bodybuilding show. So, how you actually fell in love with bodybuilding and how was your first show?
Yeah. It was really interesting. It's actually really, to me, a really interesting story because a good friend that I met in preschool, actually, and I was going out to lunch with in high school when I became vegan. We were going to fast food restaurants and eating burgers and sandwiches and all that. And I said, okay, Jordan, I'm vegan now. I'm not going to join you for lunch every day. And, so I'd known him my whole life since I was maybe 4 years old. And then, I went off to college. He went off to college and we came home. It must've been for like a winter break or something, the holidays maybe. and I bumped into him at a grocery store, and he said he had been lifting weights and getting into bodybuilding. And I had been lifting weights a little bit just for the fun of it, but I'd never heard of bodybuilding. I never heard of the, the competition, like the competing, the flexing, the on stage, the posing, never heard of it. And so he showed me some muscle magazines. And so I went over to his house, looked at muscle magazines, and decided we would start training together, at least when we were in town together. And then even when I moved, to another state, he came out to visit. We worked out together. We went to the Arnold together for our 21st birthdays. We went to the Arnold Schwarzenegger Classic, and we met Arnold. We got our picture taken with Arnold Schwarzenegger on our 21st birthdays. I still have those photos. I put them online for Throwback Thursday every once in a while. But that's how I got into it. My friend Jordan, who I've known my whole life, and inspired me to the sport of bodybuilding. So then I started training for it and getting ready for a show. And my first competition was, it was supposed to be in 2002, I think, or no, 2001, but I ended up doing one in 2003 as my first one. And it was in California, and I ended up getting 4th place out of 7, I believe. And that was 2003. And I think I took some time off. I took, if I remember correctly, I took about a year and a half off and returned in 2005. And that's when I got 1st place for the first time. And then I competed much more frequently over those next few years, and finished second and 3rd, 5th, 4th, 2nd again, 1st again, 2nd again, 5th, everywhere from 1st to last, to be honest. I finished last a few times, which was maybe 5th or 6th or something. And so it was just a learning experience every time. And I competed in, I think, 5 different federations. Some I'm not even sure if they're still around. I competed in the INBA, the INBF, the OCB, the NPC, and a local federation to the state of Washington, which is near where I lived. So NPC obviously being the most famous one. That's the building block to IFBB Pro.
Yeah.
And then INBF and INBA are pretty popular. They've been around for decades. So mostly I competed in mostly natural bodybuilding. I've been, natural, drug-free my whole life. But I did compete in NPC, which are not all those shows were tested. And I did okay. I did okay. Some I didn't do so well, because you can use different stuff if you want in NPC. But other times I did fine. In fact, even though I finished 1st place twice and 2nd place 4 times, one of the competitions I was most proud of was a 3rd place finish in an NPC show, because it was just more competitive than those natural shows.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bounced around a little bit and competed for about a decade. 2000, like I said, 2001 was, I prepared for a show. I ended up getting mono. I got sick. I got mononucleosis right before the show, like 2 weeks before. Had to go to the hospital, dealing with mono, because I was training for a show with mono, not knowing I had it until I was in the hospital. And so I had to cancel that show and then bounce back and do it 2003. But basically I prepared for shows from 2001 to 2010, decided to take a break and write books after that. And that's what I've been doing ever since.
Love it. Love this story. So can I ask, is your friend where you were starting the bodybuilding career with him, he's not vegan?
It's so funny. So I'm still in touch with them almost every day. In fact, I'm going to see him. I just saw him 2 weeks ago in Oregon. I'm going to see him again in 3 weeks in Oregon. I live in Colorado now, so I'm, travel 1,000 miles to see him. He was, the only friend at my wedding, at the actual wedding ceremony. I just had one friend. My wife had one friend there. So, I mean, he's helped me with every single book that I've ever written. And it's funny because his nickname is Vegan, but he's not vegan.
Oh, wow.
We call each other Vegan. So we hardly ever call each other Jordan and Robert. In fact, it sounds awkward to say that. It's always, he's vegan, I'm vegan. So it's, hey, vegan, how are you? So vegan. We call each other Vegan, even though he's not. But he's, he's more and more, he's living more and more of a plant-based lifestyle, following a plant-based diet now than ever before. No doubt, obviously I've had some sort of influence on that. It is strange to me that after, what is that, like 37 years of friendship and me being vegan for 27, essentially almost 27 of those years, that it's not something that he's embraced. It's a bit surprising, especially because he has a PhD in philosophy and he intellectually totally gets the animal rights message, the vegan message, the compassion, the compassionate reasons, the ethical reasons, the environmental reasons, even the nutritional reasons. He knows a lot of the dangers in these class 1 and class 2A carcinogens that are in processed meats, the the risks of consuming cow's milk and other forms of dairy, and the relationship with breast cancer and prostate cancer and perhaps other cancers, maybe colorectal cancer. The relationship between our diet and diseases like diabetes and obesity and elevated levels of cholesterol and plaque buildup in arteries and potential cardiac issues, heart attacks, strokes. He gets all of that. And so it's a bit surprising to me that he's not vegan, but that's his nickname right now. And so maybe he will live up to his name one of these days.
Yeah, the reason I asked, I was wondering, like, being vegan and starting bodybuilding career and that time, which was a long time ago, I'm sure you kind of faced that. Oh, you're never gonna make it. What, on a vegan diet, build muscles? So how you deal with that? And is he, as your friend, support you being vegan and doing bodybuilding, or he was also like, judging you and say something like that?
Yeah, those are great questions. And you know what? He's always been really supportive. He's also I think my biggest critic, because he wants to see me improve. So if I get, if I'm on magazine covers, if I'm, recognized on the street, if I have all, if I win awards, if I, he always keeps me grounded because he wants me to continue to improve, which I appreciate. It's hard at first. It's even hard a little bit on ego at first because I want to share these things. If I get endorsements from these celebrities, or if I'm signing books for bodybuilders that I used to have their pictures on my wall when I was a young bodybuilder, I had all these bodybuilders with their posters all over my apartment wall. And now I'm literally signing books for these famous bodybuilders because they're interested in plant-based diets now after, consuming animals for decades and having some potential health issues. So he's critical, at times, including when he's also someone I send like, flexing photos, like muscle update photos, and he'll, just as I'm, we're in our 40s now, and I'm trying to maintain this fit physique and have muscles. And I currently weigh about 212 pounds. I'm still almost 100 pounds heavier than when I became vegan, and still have muscle and all of that. And he's been a great supporter. And so he was never one to like, oh, you're never going to make it, all that kind of stuff. In fact, when I finally did land this major book deal, which was a lifetime in the making for me, and it was a big book deal. It's a major book deal with the world's second largest publisher. And it was even before it made the New York Times list. He told me we actually were at the gym. We're at the gym back in our hometown, getting together during the holidays. And he said, like, I knew you were going to make it someday. It was just really cool to hear that, that because he didn't talk a lot about that. He always was like trying to encourage me or critique me, or you got to do this better, that better. And then when I finally was like, I made it to a level of success where I wrote one of the most popular books in the world. He finally said like, man, I knew you were going to do that. I knew you would do that someday. And it was just really, it meant a lot to hear that from someone who knew me my entire life, or has known me for my entire life. And it was just really cool. So yeah, he's been a big part. In fact, we're chatting this weekend. We're booking a trip this weekend to Southern California to go hang out together at Venice Gold's gym and all of that. We didn't get to celebrate our 40th birthdays together because of this pandemic. His birthday is right after mine, 11 days after mine in March. And that's right when COVID hit, was March of 2020 on our 40th birthdays. And so we're going to celebrate our 40th birthdays a little bit later when we're almost 42, but we're going to take a trip together down to Southern California and do all the bodybuilding stuff and have a good time. So
Yeah, exciting trip. Oh my God, this is amazing.
yeah.
I'm so happy for you. Can I ask you, being a vegan bodybuilder, just being vegan activist, doing this for almost all your life, what are those of the challenges you think you face and overcome that was really hard?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, it's easy to say like that challenge being vegan in the sport of bodybuilding, that was it's an oxymoron for most people. That doesn't make sense. Veganism and bodybuilding don't always go together. But I think for me, the bigger challenge was bodybuilding was not something I was built to do, not something I was born to do. I was born to run. I was a very good runner. I was very, very fast. I even ran in college after high school. I was a long distance runner. My natural body weight is more like 150 pounds, 165 pounds. And I know because I've been injured. I've taken breaks from bodybuilding. When I retired from bodybuilding, I got back into long distance running and ran a bunch of half marathons like 10 years ago after my bodybuilding career. My body weight went all the way down to 165. So like, that's what I'm naturally good at. Bodybuilding is not what I'm naturally good at. It's just something that I was passionate about and that it was meaningful to me because it was a vehicle. It was a vehicle to promote veganism within a sport that it was a completely foreign concept. In bodybuilding, you eat as much meat as possible, as much protein from animals as possible, whey protein drinks, casein protein drinks, eggs, egg whites, meat, fish, all types of chicken, all types of different meat. Like that's what bodybuilding has historically been. And so I went and tried to disrupt that and show a different way. But I wasn't like I was already like this big muscular guy. I was coming in as a long distance runner. So I kind of had a long shot to do it. And there's a big chance for failure. Luckily, I was able to do okay and find some success. And now there's a bunch of vegan bodybuilders like Nimai Delgado and Tori Washington, plenty of others who achieve things way beyond anything I ever did in bodybuilding. And I'm happy for that. And I'm happy for them and happy for the roles they play in the vegan movement. And, I guess that was probably physically the biggest challenge was I was trying to make it in a sport that I wasn't built for. I mean, for perspective, I didn't run for 10 years, right? I was just doing bodybuilding, didn't do any running at all. And then when I retired from bodybuilding, I got back into running. I trained for like 4 months or something. And I finished in the top 5 in every race that I competed in. And I even won one race and set a course record. Like, I mean, who does that after not running for 10 years? Like, that's what I'm built for, but it took me, so what I can accomplish in a few months in running took me a decade to accomplish, essentially in bodybuilding, just so much slower. So the patience, that was a challenge, being patient that it's going to take me a little bit longer to build muscle, and not because I'm vegan, but because this is not something I'm built to do. And then, at times, maybe the social aspect, I worked on cruise ships and traveled around the world. I spent years out at sea, 2 years out sailing around on cruise ships, traveling to 30 countries. That was a bit of a challenge, if I'm being honest. There wasn't a ton of, this was 20 years ago also, there wasn't a ton of food available for me besides like rice and vegetables and fruits, salads. So I had my mom was shipping me boxes of Cliff Bars and all this stuff. And I would visit grocery stores in the Caribbean or in Florida or in Europe or in California or Mexico or wherever, and stock up on vegan food from like the health food store, like in one in London, one in Florida, one in San Diego or San Francisco, wherever my ship was based. So some of those things, the social aspects were a bit challenging to overcome some of that in the workplace and all of that, but I've made it and made it a full 26 years, and I'm looking forward to all the years ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to know also about your book. So how an idea of the first book is come into your mind? Okay, you're doing the bodybuilding, right? I can imagine. And then it's nothing to do with the books. So what happened?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the thing, Avrora, the thing is, I also wanted to be a writer my whole life. Since I
Mm.
was 8 years old in third grade, I wanted to be a writer long before I became vegan, long before I became a bodybuilder. I wanted to write. Like as I started the conversation saying, my dad wrote 15 books, even though
Mm.
they were about animal agriculture and animal science. It was still something that I think I was inspired by.
Yeah.
I just remember watching my dad, working in his office when I was a little kid, writing books, and I'm like, man. And in my third grade class with Mrs. Young, we had book writing as our projects. We wrote little books. I still have them. 33 years later, I still have these little books that I wrote, and they were laminated and spiral bound, and so they felt like real books, as a kid. And I said, man, I'm going to do that someday. I'm going to do that someday. So I was writing books even in high school. I had my own writing coach. I wrote a 100-page book in high school. I wrote children's adventure stories. I wrote personal development, motivational, self-help books. That's what I did. And in fact, I tried writing those books first. I had an agent. I was pitching this motivational book to publishers, and I was turned down by every single publisher. And I was at Brendan Brazier's house and in Los Angeles at the time. He was a good friend of mine. We worked together with Vega for 10 years. And he said, Robert, you got to write a book about vegan bodybuilding. That's what people know you as a vegan bodybuilder. Because at that point, I'd already been in magazines and newspapers and toured for years as a public speaker about vegan bodybuilding, had the website for 10 years or almost 10 years at that point. I competed for a decade. And I said, I don't want to, I want to write about the motivational stuff, which is what enabled me to become a successful vegan bodybuilder in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
But he convinced me, you got to write about vegan bodybuilding. And quite frankly, I just didn't want to have to look up all the technical stuff. I didn't want to have to look up all the conversions and the macronutrient breakdown and grams.
Yeah,
Of
it's so
this.
hard. Mm-hmm.
Like I just didn't want to back then. I'm a storyteller. I'm naturally a storyteller. That's what I wanted to do. But I wrote the first vegan bodybuilding book, and I sat down, and honestly, if I'm remembering correctly, I probably wrote 100 pages in the first 4 days. Like it just came to me. Like it was so easy. Just like running comes naturally, writing, it was just so easy for me. It just comes out so naturally. So I wrote that first book. I self-published it and started traveling around. It was called Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness. It's been in print for 11 years, but it's just going out of print right now because it did get acquired by a publisher shortly after it came out. And the publisher told me a few weeks ago that they're letting that book go to rest after 11 years. So it's no longer going to be in print. But then I went on and self-published the book Shredded and Plant-Based Muscle, which I wrote with Vanessa Espinosa, a good friend and training partner of mine. And then I took a different route and wrote an ebook called How to Build a Successful Vegan Brand. And that was a lot of fun to write, to be honest. And then that's when I had the idea for the Plant-Based Athlete, which was actually a book that I pitched in 2013. I had a different agent, and I almost got a book deal with the Plant-Based Athlete back in 2013, 8 years ago, but didn't work out. And so I decided to revisit that, got a new agent, and decided to co-author it with my longtime friend, Matt Frazier from No Meat Athlete, because my agent told me I needed to co-author. So I said, okay, Matt seemed to be the perfect fit. Here I was running vegan bodybuilding. He was running No Meat Athlete. I'm more of a strength athlete. He's an endurance athlete. We've been friends for 10 years. We both run two of the largest vegan athlete communities in the world. Let's come together. So we did. We spent about 2 years writing it, and it was an instant New York Times bestseller. It landed at number 4 on the New York Times bestseller list the week that it came out. To my surprise, it became a number 1 international bestseller. It finished number 1 in Canada. And I forgot it was even selling in Canada. I was so focused on the US market. I forgot it was in Canada, where it was one of the most popular books in the country. And as I mentioned, now it's been translated into 6 languages, which will come out in those languages in the next 12 months or so. So
that's amazing.
yeah, just an idea or desire, like I wanted to write and I worked at it. And I, of course, like everybody else, I failed and I failed and I failed and I failed and failed. And I didn't even I wanted to be a writer since I was 8. And my first book didn't come out until I was 30. And then I didn't make the
Mhm.
bestseller list until I was 41. You see what I'm saying? It just takes, it just takes time. It takes
Yeah.
time and patience. And, but it's been very, very rewarding. And I mean, you can tell I'm having a lot of fun doing it. So it's been great.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your story. This is why I know you as an amazing motivational person. That's when you never give up. Just like in your story, right? You was wanted to do something from 8 years old. And you guys who listen or watch us, please make attention here. And he accomplished and even did more than he expect right now, just because you never give up, right? Your first book didn't even went as well, right? But you were constantly doing this. You was getting and doing more and publishing new one and doing it more. And finally, I think this is amazing result. So I don't know, really, I don't know a person who don't know your book at the moment. And I live in Hawaii. So, it tells me something. And plus, I wanted to ask you why you think at this time it's workout. Like, I feel like vegan lifestyle is got so popular in the last couple of years. So what do you think about that? What is your thoughts why it's happening right now?
Yeah, it's like any kind of movement, it reaches a tipping point or some sort of breaking point where it appeals to the masses. And so, these kind of books that I've been writing or these ideas that I've had wouldn't have worked 20 years ago or 15 years ago, or maybe even 10 years ago. They just wouldn't have. But now, as you're seeing so many people embrace a vegan lifestyle, and because of all types of reasons, because of Forks Over Knives, because of the Game Changers, because of Tabitha Brown, because of Alicia Silverstone, because of PETA, because all these different reasons, they all work together. They all work together, whether it's celebrities or authors or athletes or chefs or activists, environmentalists, influencers on social media. It's
Mm-hmm.
something that gains traction. And so, I was bummed like when my book was not accepted in 2013, almost by a publisher 8 years ago, The Plant-Based
Mm-hmm.
Athlete, but it didn't get accepted. But now look at all the athletes I was able to write about and tell their stories in a book that came out now in 2021, because some of these athletes were not vegan back then.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them were, like Scott Jurek and Rich Roll and Brendan Brazier and Fiona Oakes and Christine Vardaros and many others, but also a lot of them are new. They're newer to
Yeah.
veganism. So like now is the time. I mean, look, The Plant-Based Athlete became a bestseller, right? Tabitha Brown's book just came out maybe a month and a half ago, became a #1 New York Times bestseller. Her book, Feeding the Soul, and she's a vegan activist, actress, social media superstar.
Mm-hmm.
Joanne Lee Molinaro, the Korean vegan, her book just came out, landed #3 on the New York Times bestseller list. I mean, these are back to back vegan books making the New York Times bestseller list. And right before us was Fiber Fueled that made the New York Times list, and Mastering Diabetes made the New York Times list, and Forks Over Knives made the New York Times list. It's and I'm sure many others. I mean, my friend John Lewis from Badass Vegan has a book coming out relatively soon.
Mm-hmm.
Charity Morgan has a book coming out January 18th called something like Unbelievably Vegan. I think it's a cookbook. These are all going to do really well because there's a market for it now. There's this, whether it's, we probably haven't quite reached a tipping point, but certainly a point of awareness where most people anywhere in the Western world and largely around the world as a whole know someone who's vegan, right? It wasn't like that decades ago, where you were like the only vegan around, the only vegan in
Mm-hmm.
town, the only vegan in school, the only vegan in your class, the only vegan, but now the awareness is so much more elevated that I turn on the TV and I'm a big sports fan, it seems like almost every time I turn on the TV, there's a vegan athlete on TV in basketball or football or baseball or tennis or whatever, race car racing. There's a vegan athlete all the time. And then if it's not an athlete, it's an actress or an actor, who's vegan.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's just very, very common now. And it's through the collective effort, the collective awareness. And I think it's also, it has to do with the environment and climate change and climate awareness, and the fact that animal agriculture has an incredible stress on our planet. And not only that, it oftentimes leads to people becoming sick, becoming obese or diabetic, or developing cancer, or just being overweight and struggling, and with plaque buildup in their arteries and not feeling well, or high blood pressure, or whatever the case is. That's something that's diet related. I think people are becoming aware of that. They're becoming aware of, like, oh yeah, most of America, and I mean most people, the majority are overweight, and a big chunk of them are obese. And you'd say, well, what's wrong with that? That's every body type is different. You're right. Nothing wrong with that, except the fact that being overweight or obese is a significant contributor to having early mortality, but dying prematurely. Those are incredible factors, because you're typically not just overweight. You're also overweight with damaged arteries. You're overweight with a stressed heart. You're overweight with putting extra pressure on joints, ligaments, tendons, your digestive system, all these different things. It's not just being overweight or obese is inherently bad on its own. It's because it contributes to all these other things. And it's because of the types of foods and beverages consumed to make someone overweight or obese. Those types of foods contribute to many of these diseases too. So it's kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people, I think, and from a nutrition or from a health standpoint. And especially now, when everyone's talking about health and wellness and immune system and trying to be healthy and not get sick and not have complications from illnesses they may or may not get. It all leads to this diet rich in vitamins, minerals, fiber, overall nutrition, antioxidants, all that stuff. And that's a plant-based diet. And so it's just catching fire. And I think it will continue for a long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. But how you are thinking about the idea of being vegan doesn't mean being healthy, right? So a lot of the time people say that, okay, so eating a lot of plants and vegetables and legumes and whole grains, that's healthy. Yes, this is going to help us with, protect us from all of those disease, but it doesn't mean it has to be vegan, because, a lot of vegan have, like you in high school, eat chips and French fries, and that's also vegan. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, well, certainly it's kind of, cliche to say, just because it's vegan doesn't mean it's healthy. People say that all the time. And yeah, there's truth to that. But across the board, I mean, we list all these things in our book. So I'll just list a few of them, because these are real, like, good sticking points or talking points. Okay. So one of the Achilles heels of the American diet or the Western diet is dietary cholesterol, right? I mean, elevated cholesterol levels lead to all kinds of health problems, and dietary cholesterol only comes from animal foods. Okay. It doesn't come from plants. Your cholesterol could be raised from plant-based fats, plant-based foods, but you don't consume any dietary cholesterol from plants. So that's one way to immediately start tackling cholesterol, lowering cholesterol, is by avoiding animal foods of all types. Okay. So cholesterol is number one. Number two is fiber. 97% of Americans don't get enough fiber, right? Which is important for health and fighting off disease and having good gut microbiome and all of these things. 97% of Americans do not consume enough fiber. Fiber is only found in plants. Okay. So this is another really strong case for plants. Animal protein, animal foods, animal fat just doesn't have fiber in it. Okay, antioxidants, the things that we need for our health, to fight off free radicals, to be healthy, be well. Antioxidants are incredibly important. They're largely found in fruits and vegetables, especially dark pigment, dark colored fruits like blackberries, blueberries, cranberries, strawberries, raspberries, foods like that. And there are 64 times more antioxidants in plants than in animal foods. And the reason why there's even 1/64th in the first place in animal foods is from the plants that they eat, the grass, the greens, whatever they're eating, the plants they're eating. And so essentially, antioxidants are almost exclusively found in plants, very small amounts in animal foods. So those are a few big ones, but also a really significant one, and it's worth understanding, is, okay, we want to talk about something like obesity, which is a big problem. And maybe 1 in 3 people in America are obese, maybe more than 1 in 2, over half are overweight. So that comes from consuming a surplus of calories. As you know, you're consuming more calories than you are expending or using each day. So how do we do that? Well, animal foods are very, very calorie dense, right? They're significantly more calorie dense than plant-based foods, to the point that, for example, leafy green vegetables contain about 60 to 100 calories per pound. Okay, not very many at all. 60 to 100 calories per pound, whereas meat might be about 1,000 to 1,400 calories per pound. So 14 times the calorie density. Other vegetables, broccoli and cruciferous vegetables, are about 200 calories per pound. But processed animal-based foods, cheeses and dairy products, things like that, are typically around 1,500 calories per pound. Fruits are about 300 calories per pound. And again, you get up to ice cream and these other animal-based foods, or the ones that are traditionally animal-based, well over 1,000, 1 to 2,000 calories per pound. And then the sweet spot is around that 500 calorie per pound range. And that's things like potatoes and yams and sweet potatoes and rice and lentils and beans and those hearty legumes, grains, and root vegetables. That's where it's at. And that's still a fraction of the calorie density of animal-based foods. And then avoiding processed foods and junk foods, which could be vegan or not, right? There's a range. Junk foods come in all forms. And those are about something like 2,500 calories per pound. And that's largely because of the oils that are in them, because oil is 4,000 calories per pound. So that's just another thing to consider, that across the board, when you're comparing plant-based protein or plant-based foods, plant-based calories with animal-based calories, there's just a big disparity there, a big gap in calorie density. The only exception being nuts. Nuts and seeds are very, very calorie dense at 2,800 calories per pound, so even more than meat, which is why we don't make like peanuts or almonds the center of a meal. We're not making a big meal around sesame seeds. There are things that are added to meals in small quantities because they're so calorie dense. So yeah, the arguments for the benefits of plant-based diet, just to recap, are the one we just talked about. They're so much more nutrient rich and calorie poor, than these calorie rich and nutrient poor animal-based foods. So you get more nutritional return on investment. There's more nutrients per calorie in these low calorie, high nutrient foods. And they also have fiber, which we absolutely need. They contain no dietary cholesterol, and they have 64 times more antioxidants than animal-based foods. They also have nitric oxide in leafy greens. They have phytonutrients. They have water, which our bodies are 70% water anyway. And they contain all these vitamins, minerals, and these micronutrients. So yeah, nutritionally across the board, I just think they're a better choice, and they're environmentally more sustainable. They have a lower cost. I wrote a 35-page paper about the true cost of foods on veganstrong.com, identifying the most cost-effective foods you can get for the nutritional yield that you get from them. Like how many, like what nutrition do you get per penny spent? And as it turns out, lentils are the best bang for your buck. And then other like pinto beans, black beans, other legumes and oats, foods you might think about. I mean, these are so cheap, these dry goods, when you get them in bulk at the store. Everyone knows that rice and beans and oats are very, very cheap, but they have great nutrition, and they have a great calorie density, good nutritional yield. They're filling, they're satiating, they're healthy, full of fiber, and they barely cost anything. And they're available almost anywhere in the world. So those are some things that make the case for a plant-based diet.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you so much for sharing this information with us and with everyone who listen. This is all in your book. I know because I actually not quite a bit read it. I listened that, which is one more option you have for guys. So if you don't have time, go and buy it. Where is your book is available? Tell us.
Yeah, so the Plant-Based Athlete right here is available anywhere books are sold. You know, it's very, very popular on Amazon. It's in Barnes and Noble. It's in your independent bookstore in your whatever town that you live in. It's available all over North America. If you live outside of North America, you can still get it through Book Depository, which ships anywhere in the world. We have people who have the book in Japan. They get it, in Peru and throughout Europe. They get it from Book Depository, which ships around the world. And soon we'll have it in at least 6 different foreign languages within the next year or so. But right now you can find it on Amazon and in every major bookstore because it is a bestseller. It's a hardcover book. It's new. It's by a major publisher. So it is in essentially every bookstore that you can imagine.
Yeah. And it's an amazing book, guys. I personally, as a vegan nutritionist, recommend it. I think it's like a teaching book. You can teach yourself how to be the best on the vegan diet, not only for athletes, just for regular health. I really think that's like a really amazing book you made, guys. I absolutely love it. And I will also going to add in the description below, of course, where you guys can buy that book if you need to, and where people can connect with you, Robert.
Yeah, thank you. So I've been running veganbodybuilding.com for almost 20 years. I realize, it's not the best looking site in the world. There's a lot of technical things that I don't understand to make it really pretty and all of that. And I just quite frankly haven't used it a whole lot because of social media. I've been on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of that, so much more over the last 5, 6, or 7 years than my own website, but you can still go check it out. A lot of good articles there on veganbodybuilding.com, but also just search Vegan Bodybuilding and Fitness or Robert Cheeke on any of those social platforms like Instagram, like Twitter, like Facebook, and you will find me. I also did about 100 podcasts, kind of like this. I've done about 100 of these podcast or radio interviews. And so you can just, if you like this interview, you can find more. You can just Google Robert Cheeke and you'll find dozens and dozens of interviews talking about all types of different topics. So I would appreciate that. And yeah, send me a note on Instagram or Twitter anytime.
Amazing. And before I let you go, I have a small game that I play with everyone on my podcast. So I'm going to say 2 things and you have to choose one. Okay.
Okay, let's do it.
Coffee or tea?
Tea.
Black or purple?
Purple.
Gym or outdoor workouts?
Outdoor workouts.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Juice or smoothie?
Smooth. Tie.
Wine or water?
Water.
Chocolate or sweet cream?
Chocolate.
Kiss or hug?
Hug.
Love or sex?
Both at the same time.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for being honest with us. And that was it. We just want to know a little bit more about you. And that was the game. So I appreciate all your time, information. I love your book. Thank you so much for all you do in the vegan community. Before you go, please share us what is your next steps. Maybe we're going to wait for a new book. Maybe we can see a movie from you. Anything you have planned for, share with us.
Yeah, I think there could be another book in the future, but I think right now, what I'm really looking forward to is getting back out on tour. It's hard to say, with what's going on in the world around us, but I have been on tour a little bit the last couple of months. I've been speaking on the East Coast and the Midwest. I've been out in California. So I think that's one of the things that I'll be focusing on in the immediate future is getting back out there at events, signing books, meeting people in person. And that's what I've done for 15 years and what I really miss. And that's something that I think people will be able to look forward to. And we'll see a lot from me on social media is that I'm getting that back out there again and having fun, interacting and engaging with people. So I'll be doing that and then perhaps working on some projects behind the scenes. And when those are ready, I'll be sure to announce those as well.
Amazing. So excited to meet you. Come to Hawaii with your book. I'll be happy
Yeah, that's
here.
yeah. If you have ideas, I've reached out to the vegan festival. I think it's in Oahu. I'm not exactly
Mhm,
sure where it is, but maybe it's in Maui. But there's a vegan festival, vegan organization there. I have
mhm.
multiple friends who have spoken there, including Brendan Brazier, Leilani Munter, and others. But I've never. That's one of the few vegan festivals that's been around for a while that I've never been invited to. So that would be fun to speak in Hawaii. I have been there twice. I've been to Hilo, and then spent about a week there,
Mhm,
and then I think and Honolulu, and
mhm.
spent about a week there. But it's been a long time. I haven't been to Hawaii since 2008, I think, or
Oh,
2010.
wow.
It's been,
Okay.
yeah, so 11, 12, 13 years. It's been a
Mhm.
while.
Yeah, let me check on that. I hope this year, because last year there wasn't the vegan festival because of COVID. So I hope this year they're gonna be getting this back, and maybe, yeah, maybe you're gonna come here. I'll be happy to help you with that. So thank you so much for your time today. And I know I can talk to you forever, but we have to finish this. So thank you, and have an amazing rest of your, booking career. I think you're doing a great
Thank
job.
you. Thank you, Avrora. I really appreciate that, and hopefully see you in Hawaii sometime. We'll get a meal, get a workout in, and then speak to an audience out there. So
Yeah,
look forward to it in the future.
perfect.